For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with limited drinking.
Hello, and welcome to the Snow Brains Podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a professional mountain guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snow Brains, and I've only ever been in one fight in my entire life. It was a street brawl in San Francisco. I don't think I landed a single punch, but I definitely got punched twice, hard in the face, and got fish hooked.
This episode of the Snow Brains Podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Are you ready for an unforgettable ski getaway that takes care of everything? And I mean everything. Head to one of Club Med's mountain resorts where you can experience the thrill of the slopes without worrying about a thing. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get all your lift tickets, ski passes, ski and snowboard lessons for all ages and ski levels, delicious meals, exciting après-ski activities, and even childcare for the kids, all included in the price. So you can focus on what matters most, carving perfect turns and enjoying the breathtaking views. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to book your ski escape today.
My guest today is the legendary ski mountaineer, author, inventor, and big mountain scientist, Andrew McLean. In 2017, Powder Magazine voted Andrew as one of the 48 most influential skiers of all time. Andrew is one of the best ski mountaineers on the planet, having skied first descents on every continent and has been featured in a myriad of ski movies, including the big mountain skiing documentary, Steep. Andrew is the inventor of the Whippet self-arrest ski pole, among many other groundbreaking inventions in the mountaineering universe. Andrew has skied over 100 first descents all over the world. Andrew graduated from the very prestigious Rhode Island School of Design and went on to become a product designer for Black Diamond in Salt Lake City for 14 years. Andrew was even an avalanche forecaster for the Utah Avalanche Center for 1 year. Andrew wrote the most legendary, hilarious guidebook ever created called The Chuting Gallery, a guide to steep skiing in the Wasatch, that is simultaneously considered the Bible and Holy Grail of steep skiing in the Wasatch Mountains of Utah. Andrew is a gifted writer and has written articles for Powder Magazine, Backcountry Magazine, Skiing Magazine, and many other publications. Andrew is most likely the very first professional ski mountaineer on Earth. Andrew McLean lives in Park City, Utah, with his wife Polly, their 2 daughters, and 2 poorly behaved canines. Hello, Andrew. Welcome to the show. How are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Really good to see you. We were just saying that, we're supposed to be seeing each other in Ushuaia, Argentina right now, and headed to Antarctica right now, which is, yeah, he's wiping tears away. So kind of sad. It hurts that we're not doing that. That's it's my favorite ski trip. It's got to be one of your favorite ski trips, Andrew.
Yeah. If I had to cash in every ski trip for one trip, that would be it. It's just the combination of everything is phenomenal down there.
That's a bold statement, especially coming from you. I kind of want to start here by just saying, I've been researching you, Andrew, and there's so much to unpack about you. You're one of the most famous yet enigmatic big name skiers on earth. And I want to change that today. I want to expose you. I'm going to expose you to our audience. And right off the bat, I think the audience is feeling it, but you and I are friends. We've spent weeks together, in small sailboats in Svalbard, Norway, ski guiding. We've spent time in boats in Antarctica ski guiding. And so this interview is going to be fun. It's going to be frank. And I'm really excited to have this venue so I can kind of dig in and ask you tougher questions than normal. So watch out. So are you the very first professional ski mountaineer? And if so, how the hell did you do that?
I was an early adapter in the U.S. I think depends on how you define ski mountaineer or professional ski mountaineer. When we started out, there was no such thing. And we'd be on a skin track and find a dropped power bar or something and be like, we're sponsored. So it was kind of a joke, to be sponsored because it was just backcountry skiing was nothing at the time. And, then it caught on and especially with the influence from the European gear coming in, the, Dynafits and just lighter, more reliable AT gear. Suddenly it just caught on in America. And because I was working at Black Diamond Equipment, it just took off. And, at some point, It was like, well, you can have, whatever gear you want, and then, we'll pay for your trips. And then at one point it was like, oh, and we're going to pay you on top of this. It's like, really?
Wow.
So I think as much as anything, it was just kind of the right place at the right time. I just kind of caught the wave as it was building.
Timing is everything. And we'll dive into that more in a little bit. How many ski movies have you been in, and which was your favorite?
Been in about 10 to 15 of them. Say my favorite was Steep, which was put out by Sony. And it was just a really cool, well-done documentary with a lot of interesting people in it. Doug Coombs, Seth Morrison, Ingrid Backstrom.
Shane McConkey, yeah.
Shane McConkey, yeah. And I just thought they did a really good job with the filming and covering the whole thing and kind of telling the story of big mountain skiing. A wide variety with its European roots and then how it kind of transferred into the U.S. and where it was going. Each person was kind of different. Shane McConkey was doing backflips off cliffs, and I was doing more expedition skiing. So I thought it was interesting and well done. Then we had a really amazing avalanche that we got caught in.
And we are going to talk about that more here today. What's your main goal when you go skiing? What are you looking for out there?
Just on a regular day, try to make the best of the day. It's kind of, as you get more and more into backcountry skiing, you're just like, all right, it's kind of overcast and windy and it hasn't snowed for 3 weeks. I'm going to go try to find powder. And I think that, after you've done it for a while and you find powder, you're just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a little sleuthing mission to, come up with a theory and then see if you can pull it off. Going out with a good group of friends, that makes a big difference too.
You're a very famous professional skier, and I get the feeling that you'd be doing the exact same thing without the fanfare. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of started to realize that on some of the trips where I've been a guide, been on some amazing mega yachts, and you meet people that are, just wealthy beyond your wildest imagination. And it was like, if I had all this money, I think I'd be doing the same thing.
I'd still just go skiing.
Go skiing. I'd be on, going to cool trips and going skiing and meeting people and traveling around. So, yeah, I think I would. I might have a few more pairs of skis and a fancier car, but yeah, basically the same thing.
What's your biggest accomplishment in ski mountaineering?
I have to say the biggest single one would probably be skiing the Alaska family, which is Foraker, Hunter, and Denali. That was a multi-year quest, and they were all kind of big peaks.
14 years, right?
Something like that, yeah. And it never, we started out just skiing Denali, and that was great by itself. And then I kind of got interested in skiing, then I skied Hunter with Lauren Glick and Armand and Weedy. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I've done 2 out of the 3 of the family, and looked over and it's like, oh, I should give Foraker a try. So that took 2 tries to get it. And we just got it. It was a 2-week trip, and we skied it on the last day.
Wow.
That we possibly could. So I'd say that was probably the biggest single one, longest time, most involved.
We might dip into that a little bit more later as we talk about your ski expeditions. What would you do if you couldn't ski?
I think I'd just be a designer. I've always been, even before I started skiing, I just liked building stuff and, making stuff and putting things together. As a kid, I was always making models and painting stuff and burning airplanes and building kites and stuff. So I'd build stuff and be a designer.
And you invented some incredible things like the Whippet, the ice axe ski pole, and we're definitely going to talk about that later. What scares you the most in the mountains?
Avalanches, for sure. Specifically, maybe the head of a steep couloir that has a lot of wind loading in it. I've just seen a lot of them, fail. We had a mutual friend, Kip and Allison, they're caught in an avalanche there. I was involved in early avalanche fatality. So, hiking up a couloir and right at the head of it, when you get a lot of wind loading coming in, I think that's one of the scarier scenarios. I mean, there are ways to kind of diffuse it, roping in, ski cutting it, things like that. But when I see things like that, especially when I see like TGR movies with people, hucking their meat and landing on these big fat wind-loaded pillows, it's just like, no!
Oh gosh.
So, yeah, that's probably the biggest single item.
And that was so sad. Kip and Allison on Split Mountain in California. I believe that was 2011. That was devastating. I was up at Points North Heli when that happened, where Kip works. I saw him as he was leaving the Cordova airport, and that was the last time I saw him. And then obviously that trip just had a big shadow over it.
Yeah, he was a big part of Points North.
Yes, absolutely. What do you love most about the mountains?
Just being out in them. A lot of times it's hard to get motivated. You're tired, or conditions aren't perfect, and it's like, and then you go out, and as soon as I go out, it's just like, oh yeah, this is great. It's just things. There's kind of a magic to the mountains. You end up just having adventures and meeting people, and come back, and it's a pretty rare day that I would ever be kind of disappointed that I went out. It's always good to be out in the mountains.
I can agree with you on that. What's the funniest accident you've had in the mountains?
We were down in Patagonia doing the southern Patagonia ice cap around the backside, and we had dug a big outhouse. We had a lot of snow, and I went to dig out the outhouse, and the whole thing collapsed, and I fell into it. And we were nowhere from running water, so I had to use a pancake scraper, a spatula, basically scrape my pants off. It was totally disgusting.
Human feces. Oh,
yes.
It wasn't funny at the time. Funny now.
It was pretty funny at the time.
Okay, good.
Especially if you were my other two friends that were there. But
oh my gosh.
But yeah, there've been, I don't know, maybe not so much skiing, but I mean, just in the travel, on the ice axe trip. I mean, there's just a lot of great memories that kind of come with the skiing lifestyle and the people.
The culture, all that stuff. What's the scariest accident you've had in the mountains?
Scariest one, I don't know, maybe the second time I skied the Mowich Face was pretty terrifying. The first time was just this perfect corn snow, and we just were able to link turns all the way down at Mount Rainier. So I went back with a friend, Mark Holbrook, and just told him how great it was and how awesome it was going to be, and it was just a sheet of ice.
Oh.
So it's really big, 5,000 plus feet, 50 degrees, just unrelenting. And I think we made maybe one turn down the whole thing, just side slipped the whole thing. It was terrifying.
Sounds like you have a wet avalanche at one point?
It was just, we tried that one twice as well. The first time we basically got avalanched off it just with, it's a really tight choke. It was just a fire hose of spindrift coming down. So the second time, it was just two of us. So it was a lot tighter. So we weren't really getting hit with avalanche debris, but it's just a really unrelenting technical route, rappelling, setting anchors, natural anchors, bollards, pitons, and just right off the bat, you're in super steep terrain, and it just gets more and more committing from there on.
Sounds terrifying.
Gosh. We could tell jokes.
Oh yeah, that might help me keep me from crying. And on that note, this is not the funnest thing to talk about, but I think it's important for our audience because we've all lost friends in the mountains. How many friends have you lost in the mountains, Andrew?
Let's see. Of the people that I've been with, 4. But beyond that, like Kip and Allison and people that were acquaintances that I wasn't involved with their accident. I mean, it must be 20 over the years. Seems like there hasn't been anything for the last couple of years. That's been a good sign.
Knock on wood. Have you ever been hurt while skiing?
I cracked a rib once. And that's about it.
That doesn't count. How many avalanches have you been in?
I've been buried once, and I, triggered endless avalanches, where they broke right at your feet and maybe went a little ways and then stopped. Mm-hmm. I've been caught and carried maybe 5 to 10 times.
Not bad. And it's just impressive too that you've essentially never been hurt. You've been able to avoid avalanches, and then the lines that you ski. It's phenomenal. And there was one story about you taking a 500-foot fall somewhere. Is that BS or is that real?
Yeah, that was.
Where was that?
That was up at Alta. It was in the Alta ski area.
No.
In the resort.
Well, that's not what I imagined that happening to you.
I know. Yeah, and I was kind of a weird circumstance. I went up, and they had just opened the gate for Main Baldy, and I went up there, and I was waiting for a friend, and there was a big delay, so the whole crowd got ahead of me.
and went up, and I was like, oh,
I
now
hate that.
I don't want to ski Main Baldy with 50 other people. So I started down one that was earlier before that called Perlas, which is there's like Main Baldy, and then there's Dogleg, and then way over to the side is Perlas. And it had a little drop to it that was maybe just 3 feet, a little cornice, and I wadded up a snowball and threw it on it, and it just kind of plopped. And I was like, all right, this is going to be just soft powder. And so when the friend caught up to me, it was like, all right, let's go, because it'd been a while of waiting. And I jumped and landed on a little wind lip, and I thought it was just going to poof, but except the wind lip was actually really hard. And I tipped backwards, and I just started to fall backwards. And more than anything, I was just annoyed. I was like, damn it. It just blew this line that I just took off like a rocket, because it was so steep and it was actually pretty hard underneath. And I just started, spinning, and I hit once, and it kicked me way up in the air. And I was seeing like cliffs and rocks and sky and snow. And I was like, this is it. This is, I'm going to break my back. I'm going to die. I'm going to hook up on a tree, because there were trees there. And, then I hit again, but it was so steep that it didn't really hurt. It just boomed me back up in the air. And I fell from the ridge line all the way down to where that ballroom traverse is.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit 3 times and just totally accidentally landed on my feet standing.
Whoa. It's just, but I mean, it's hard to even understand.
It just totally stopped. And it was springtime, and there were a whole bunch of people up at the top of Germania, and I got a big round of applause.
I'm sure you
But I was still kind of like, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I lived through that. This, a lone ski patroller came out, because there's a ski patrol shack up there, and he just skis out, and we were only like 5 feet apart, because he was on the traverse and I was right above it. And he's like, are you okay? And I was like, yep. He's like, you got really lucky. I was like, yep. But, in a way, it was really educational, because it kind of taught me, like, whenever that happens, whenever you start to fall on really steep terrain, you've got to get it under control, like right there.
Quick.
And that's where kind of whippets help out, because you're able to dig in and stop, or at least orient your feet underneath you. But yeah, you don't have any time on really steep terrain. The whole idea of like setting up a self-arrest and getting out your axe, and I think that's just total fallacy. It's just you're moving too fast.
That incredible story. Thanks for sharing that. You've been on ski expeditions in every continent and had first descents on every continent. Which was your favorite ski expedition?
I think maybe Baffin Island in 2002, where we did a kiting expedition with Brad Barlich. It was just the 2 of us, and there was no information on it. We just based the whole trip on photos, and there were polar bears, and we built our own kites, these big traction kites. And we just didn't know, what we were going to find. We didn't know if the kites were going to work. We didn't know if we were going to get eaten by polar bears. We didn't know how cold it was going to be. We didn't know if the ice was going to break up and drift out. And it just turned out to go the other way. Everything just lined up perfectly. The kites were amazing, and we skied, I think, 19 new couloirs up there, and they were all just, total 5-star sweethearts. Really, really, really good. So I think that one stands out.
Hearing about that trip, I've heard about it a few times. It almost pisses me off, because I'm never going to go there. I'm never going to do that. I don't know how to even execute something like that. It's just that trip is incredible. I want to see more media from that. So where have you been on a ski expedition that you would not go back to?
Iceland.
Oh, really? Tell us why.
I went there on a trip. That's where the Steep Avalanche was filmed.
Okay.
Steep. And it was right at the zenith of their economy. It was before the whole world economy exploded. And it was just unbelievably expensive. And we hadn't done much research on it. We're just like, Iceland is going to be a cool little thing. And remember getting there to Reykjavik, and we got in all-night flight. First thing in the morning, John Greiber buys a round of coffee and muffins, and he comes back and he's like, I'm not doing that again. It was $120.
Whoa.
And the trip kind of went downhill from there. I mean, the skiing was great and the people were great and we had a good time, but I'm still kind of emotionally and financially recovering from that one. We didn't put much research into it. We looked at these really old maps from World War II, and just under this idea that, it's going to be this remote Greenland type place. And we get there and we found this area and we're like, yeah, we're going to, ski here. This looks like great terrain. And when we got there, in the intervening years between World War II and 2000 or whenever it was, there's an entire town with a ski village and chairlifts built there.
Oh, that's not as remote as you were looking for.
No, so we ended up just free forming the whole time, and the trip was very disjointed, but it's still a fun trip. But I'm still a little scarred about going back there.
Deep scars right there. The New Yorker called you a mountain scientist after seeing how you kind of tinker and build things in your house, including those kites you were talking about for Baffin Island. Do you think that's an accurate portrayal, mountain scientist?
I think scientist might be given a little too much credit. I like maybe mountain tinkerer.
I like that.
I'm not really, I don't do it really in a scientific method, but I just like building stuff. So I do, a lot of tinkering and a lot of building and thinking about stuff.
What have you built? What's a fun list of things you've built and designed to make life better in the mountains?
I did a bunch of carabiners. The first wire gate carabiner, if you're familiar with those, like the little paper clip.
Mm-hmm.
That was the hot wire. And then I did the live wire. I did the peckers, the talon, knee pads, the camelots. You're familiar with those camming devices that you kind of squeeze and they open and shut.
Was that something that hadn't existed before, the cams?
They had existed, but I did a redesign on them that came up with a single stem and lightened them up and just kind of more streamlined them. So that was a big project, about a year and a half.
Wow.
Did some smaller things like ski leashes, the asymmetrical backcountry basket, some Raven crampons, the Venom ice tool, a lot of metal spiky things.
That's a lot, and of course the Whippet, which again we're gonna get to, and then just let's do this quick because I almost don't believe this. Your resume says that you enjoy mountain unicycling. Do you really mountain unicycle? What the hell is that?
It's my pickup line for Tinder. No, it's I do. I learned how to ride. I learned how to ride a unicycle when I was a kid, and then I gave it up for a long time. And then I went to a Banff Milton Film Festival, and they had Chris Holm video, and he kind of introduced mountain unicycling. So it's the idea of taking a unicycle and basically going off trail, doing a mountain bike trail with it. So I got one and ride it. It's fun. It's great around Park City. It's really good with dogs because you go a lot slower. With a mountain bike, you can just dust them. But with a unicycle, you're going 8 miles an hour up, 8 miles on the flats, and 8 miles an hour on the steep. So, and I'm only good for an hour or so. It's a pretty good workout, and it's really good for skiing. You have to have a really quiet upper body. You can't be moving around. So I think there's a lot of crossover, and you can do the whole thing in an hour. You're pretty satisfied with a good workout.
Just one more thing that you're better than me at. Great.
That's a pretty low bar there, Miles.
Well, just the balance involved, man. That's got to go. That, like you said, it's got to really be.
I've seen your backflips.
The occasional. So you were on the Colbert Report with Stephen Colbert in 2008. Promoting the movie Steep, the ski movie you spoke of here today. The Colbert Report is one of the most popular comedy news shows of all time. It averaged 1.5 million viewers per show and was one of my favorite shows. And so I'd like to play a quick clip from the Colbert Report right now for our audience of Stephen Colbert interviewing you and asking you about the avalanche that you are in the movie Steep.
Now, when that happens to you, do you say, hell yeah, let's do some more?
I do,
or do you say, really?
Well, I'm a slow learner, so yeah, I was totally into it. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it was great to be alive afterwards, but I keep coming back. It's part of ski mountaineering.
After hearing that clip today, do you still feel that way about that avalanche in that clip?
Yeah, I think if you could teach avalanche classes, if I taught avalanche classes, and you could guarantee that it would be safe, the first thing I'd have everybody do is go for a big ride in an avalanche, just so that they kind of understood, the power of it. And, there would have to be some like pop out and you'd be safe. But yeah, I think, the experience of it was, I didn't think I was going to pull it off. I thought I was going to be washed backwards off a cliff. But, having survived it and lived through it, it's like, yeah, that was pretty damn exciting.
It's a good adrenal gland massage, if you will.
Yes.
So I'm just so curious because I love that show so much. And so seeing you on it just blew my mind. What was it like being on the Colbert Report?
Oh, it was cool. Yeah, I was a big fan of his beforehand, and it was super fast. Like,
Yes.
you just go in and, he's like, boom, 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 boom. And he's, he has a lot of makeup on him. Like when you see him really close for the cameras, and it was almost like talking to this mannequin, because he was so animated and he just had so much kind of stage makeup on, and he was just so quick, like everything was moving around. I was just kind of hanging on for the ride, like, wow, this is cool. And then it was like, thank you, goodbye. Like, yeah, cool.
And you did great, by the way. And I love how you actually joked with him and made him believe for a second that skiers wear parachutes. And then you poked fun at the French. We're better than the French. That's why we made this movie. And he was totally into that.
Oh, I knew he was a French teaser. I love the French, but you got to tease him a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And did you guys rehearse at all for the interview? No, you just jump in there.
Yeah, they have all these green rooms set up, and you're just sitting there in the green room, and they've got all this food, and he came in, just like door flies open. He came in like 10 minutes beforehand, introduced himself, and said how it's going to go, and you're just like, okay. And then they just come get you, and you walk out, and there's a lot of editing going on that he's really good at. Like he says stuff like stop point, and they'll stop something and they'll cut to a different this and that.
Interesting.
So, it was broken up a little bit more than it looked like, but it was really cool to see. The audience helped out a lot because there was a live audience. So
it pumps you up.
Pretty fun to talk to him. And then Jeb Corliss, the base jumper that wears all black, was on the same show. So that was kind of cool. I got to meet Jeb, and kind of felt like it was good. Extreme sport show. So it was fun.
Agreed. You did great. Jeb Corliss is awesome. What an experience. You were also on ABC's Good Morning America promoting the movie Steep. Did those people have any idea how to talk to you at all?
No.
Yeah.
No, it was just totally, skiing was completely foreign. They might have skied Mount Hunter a few times, but they just had no idea, like, the whole backcountry, you take a helicopter, and it's like, yeah, sure. So, it was a much different scenario. I mean, I remember the Colbert one very clearly. I don't remember much about the Good Morning America, except with Ingrid. She was a good sport. I had a great time traveling with her.
So let's jump into your life timeline, because I think this is going to really bring you to life with our listeners. I just think it's fascinating, and I really feel that each stage of your life was insanely impressive, and each stage presented challenges that led to excellence in the next stage, which resulted in you in being one of the most badass ski mountaineers on earth. And you're still doing that, and you still have a long way to go. So we'll just start off with your childhood. What was your childhood like, and where did you live and ski?
We moved around quite a bit. My dad was an ophthalmologist, eyeball doctor. And I first learned how to ski. My mom was the skier in the family. She was a ski instructor at Alta. First turns were at Alta. And then we moved to Vermont, Florida, Haiti, Connecticut, skiing around there. So I skied teeny little mountains, Haystack, Madonna Mountain, Mohawk Mountain, places like that on the East Coast. And then at a pretty young age, we moved to Seattle. And that's kind of where I grew up. And I grew up skiing at Alpental. I think that's where I got my taste of the steeps. The whole upper chair there is a really steep line. Every run is double black diamonds. I was on the racing team, so I had kind of a background in racing and a lot of good racing buddies. And that was where I got my start skiing.
That worked out great for you, because I think Alpental is one of the most awesome, badass little mountains in the Northwest for sure. And did you go to a high school ski academy? Is that what I read?
After I graduated from high school, I went to the Mission Ridge Ski Racing Academy for a year, and that was over in Wenatchee.
And that's in Oregon or Washington?
Washington.
Washington.
Over on the east side.
So you graduated from high school. You went to the academy for how long? And you did some coaching there? You got coach of the year? What is this?
No, I did 1 year of racing. And I really loved racing, but I was never that good at it. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. And then after that, went to college, and then I started coaching. So I went back to Alpental. I still had a lot of friends there, and I was a coach for the Alpental ski team.
Okay, great. Well, that moves us right into, so kind of phase two, as I have your phases written down here, is university. So after you graduated high school in 1981, you went to the Rhode Island School of Design, which is one of the best universities in the nation. And what did you learn there?
I started out thinking I was going into architecture, but there's a subdivision of that called industrial design. And industrial design is like the design of products like furniture, chairs, anything you have, the ice axes, toys, any consumer products. And I like that a lot more than architecture. So I switched to that, and it teaches you form and function and how to make mechanical drawings and how to make things fit ergonomically with the human body. And so it was a 4-year program in industrial design.
Well, it sounds like it really served you well because you ended up inventing some impressive things. And let's get into some of the dirt. So what's this about you almost getting arrested for climbing on the museum walls or the roof, or what happened there?
It wasn't almost, it was full arrest.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good.
Come on, Miles. I want credit.
I know. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you might as well own it, right? I got my facts mixed up. So you got arrested for climbing on campus. And what happened here?
Yeah, it was a friend of mine, my roommate, is the guy that got me into rock climbing. And we just read books about it. And one of the techniques is chimneying, stemming up. And there was these two buildings that were close together, and they were on campus at the Rhode Island School of Design. And one night we decided, we're just going to chimney up this thing because it was like the perfect width. So we chimney all the way up, not really even thinking about what building was what. It was just like this perfect chimney. And at the top, you kind of had to lunge off to the side and grab onto the roof and climb over. And as soon as I did that, I jumped down on the roof, and there was like this click, hum. It's like, oh, that's kind of weird. It must be like air conditioning or just something happened. But it was a silent alarm. So we were hanging out on the top there, pretty psyched. I don't know how we thought we were going to get down. It was probably lucky we did get arrested. And all of a sudden, about 15 cop cars show up. Whoa. And it's only a 3-story building. And, they came in, and we were just sitting there, and they came up, and they were all pretty psyched, like, what are you doing here? And we had beforehand, we'd read about climbing, how you need chalk. So I had ground up a bunch of, there was some wallboard, like a gypsum, sheetrock. And I ground up some sheetrock for chalk. And I didn't have a chalk bag, so I just put it in a baggie, like a little Ziploc baggie. So it was like a Ziploc baggie looking, with white powder in it. And, so they're searching us all down. They pull it out, and they're just like, check this out. So he opens it up, and this is, in the old days, he does the full finger dip, and he sticks it in there and tastes it.
He sticks it in his mouth.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was just like, it's chalk. So, that was luckily it was on campus. And so we went in, we talked, and we kind of got reprimanded, but we were just like, fully admitted to it. It was just a mistake, wrong building, great chimney, but wrong building.
Right. And might you have also gotten arrested dangling from a train trestle somewhere? Is that another?
That was
2 for 2.
I think that was maybe a year later. And there was a big train trestle that went over a bridge, and it was stuck at like a 45-degree angle over the water. And we were going to go climb Half Dome that summer. So to practice for Half Dome, we wanted to learn how to Jumar, how to climb up a rope using a special knot called a Jumar knot. And so my friend climbed up, and he rappelled down. Instead of only going like 20 feet, he went the full 150 feet of the rope. Whoa. And he's down before trying to figure out the knot, whether it worked or not. So he's down at the bottom of the rope, and he's swinging around, trying to get it to work. And I'm looking over, and the whole kind of freeway is stopped. And I'm like, God, that's, it must be traffic jam or something. Just watching Paul, and nothing's happening. And all of a sudden the fire trucks start coming. It's like, oh, there's a fire. And all of a sudden they take the exit right near me. And I'm like, hey, I wonder must be around here. And then they turned into the neighborhood that we're in, and it was like, oh no, it's right.
Uh-oh.
And then I see them turn into the road that leads to us. And yeah, they showed up with, fire engines and police cars, and they sent out, they all stayed back, all the sirens are off, and they sent out one guy that comes out, and he was like the suicide prevention negotiator.
Oh,
And he
wow.
calls up and he's like, hey, what are you doing up there? It's like, oh, just climbing. He's like, well, why don't you come on down? It's like, great, okay. So I climbed down, and he's super nice guy. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, we're just practicing climbing. And he just starts to laugh. He's like, oh my God. He's like, you guys.
You thought you guys were going to kill yourselves.
Yeah, but I guess they thought that he was committing suicide, like a failed suicide where he was dangling at the end of the rope because he was kind of ticking and squirming around. So he climbed back up, and then we both got hauled off, and then they just left us. Like, it was out in Lincoln Woods, which is like an hour away. Around 2 a.m, they let us go because nobody could claim ownership of the bridge. Nobody knew who owned it, so they couldn't do trespassing or anything. So they just let us go, and we had to find a ride home.
I love it. You got away with one, and you definitely tested the social services in your area during college. Well done. Well done, sir. Well, I think the third phase of your life is the Talon. So after graduating from the Rhode Island School of Design in 1985, you founded a company called Peregrine Mountain Products and created only one product, the Talon.
Yes, product.
This huge company.
Product.
Yeah, we could have it. Literally, yeah, you're right. It should have just been Peregrine Mountain Product. And so what was the Talon, and where did it lead you?
Talon was a 3-point rock climbing hook. So a lot of hooks just are like a fish hook. And if you're doing direct aid, like you're climbing up El Cap and you're not free climbing like, Alex Honnold, you're using cams and pitons and nuts. With a hook, you hook onto a little flake and you pull yourself up, and hook another thing, pull yourself up, maybe put a piton in, pull yourself up. So the original hooks just had one point, and they were kind of wobbly. Like when you lean onto them, they teeter. So this was like a tripod. So it had 3 different size points to it, and you could you could swing onto it. You could switch around the points, things like that. I designed that and started building it, and then started selling it. And the first people that bought it was Black Diamond Equipment, and they ended up buying the entire design. In the process of selling the design, I met John Burkaw, and he was like, oh, you're a designer. Black Diamond just started. It had grown out of Chouinard Equipment. It was only, I think, 3 or 4 months old at the time. But I knew about it through Chouinard Equipment.
And Chouinard Equipment is Yvon Chouinard, who started Patagonia as well. Continue.
Right, yeah. That was the original nexus of Patagonia, was the rock climbing division. So he was like, well, we need an industrial designer. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So packed up my 69 Camaro and drove down to Ventura. And I was down Ventura for about it was 9 months. And then Black Diamond as a whole moved to Park City. That's how I ended up back in Utah.
Fantastic, because that rolls us right into phase 4 of your life, which I have listed as Black Diamond. So you worked at Black Diamond in Salt Lake City for 14 years, I believe, as a designer. Yeah, 1991 to 2005, at least on your LinkedIn. Tell me about your experience there and about what you invented while working there.
It was really fun to, the company was really small at the time. I think at its lowest, it was maybe 40 people or something. I think nowadays it's probably pushing, I don't know, a couple hundred, easily a couple hundred. And, it was growing, and there was just full of really avid climbers and skiers and outdoor people. And, everybody was so busy that it was just like, as a designer, you're just like, what do you want to work on? And it's like, oh, carabiners. Okay, good, great. Just, work on them for a while. So, there was a lot of autonomy. You could, design stuff and find a climber that was really into, big wall climbing or sport climbing or whatever, and, develop a product that was very specific to that activity. And I'd usually have like one major project per year, but then I'd have a few side projects. Like I'd work on carabiner or camelots, and then off to the side, I'd do something like the pecker or whippet or something like that.
And what are you most proud of building there? What affected your life the most?
I'd say probably the simplest would be the wire gate carabiner. Carabiners are super simple. There's the body, which is the bent metal part that you hold on to, and then there's a gate. And the gate, the traditional gates have they're bent metal. They've got a spring, they've got a plunger, 2 rivets. So the wire gate was just replaced all of that with just a single wire loop. It was kind of, the design had been around before. It was used quite a bit in sailing. But Black Diamond with Johnny Woodward, we ended up refining it so it was nice and smooth and even, and it made a big difference for climbing because it was much more simple. 1 part instead of 6 parts for the gate. It made it a lot lighter, and it worked better in a lot of situations. It didn't jam up with ice. It didn't have any whiplash to the gate. And, originally we thought that it was just so odd and different that when we sat around and talked about sales projections, they're like, I'll sell 4,000, I'll sell 5,000, I'll sell, 800 type of thing. And I think within maybe 1 or 2 years, it was the #1 selling carabiner. And a lot of that just had to do with climbers adopting it. They take it out, they go climbing with it and go back and replace their whole rack with them. So that was pretty satisfying.
Wow, that is something to be proud of. That's amazing. And then I thought you were going to say the Whippet, the self-arrest ski pole, because I've read that.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite.
That's your personal favorite, because I've read that that's the only American invented piece of mountaineering equipment ever.
I don't know about that.
Well, let's go with it because I like exaggeration.
Okay, we could do it.
So how did you come up with that idea?
There were some other self-arrest grips. There used to be this thing called an alpenstock. So, when people walk around in the mountains, they'd have like a 6-foot long pole, and they would put a little hook on the end, and they'd use it for kind of, hooking sheep or walking around or whatever. And then there were ice axes that were really long, so you could use them kind of as a staff. And then there were some self-arrest poles from Europe that had little plastic prongs to them. So, they were more for looks. They didn't really work all that well. You take them out, and if you were booting up a couloir and climbing, you could, they'd bend and break, and they just didn't function that well. So I just wanted to design something that was a hybrid, like ice axe and ski pole. And that started out pretty much as a side project, and I just made a bunch of different prototypes and then introduced it at one of the sales meetings, and it kind of caught on, and they decided to fold it into the product line, and started out just as a small little side project. But it's cool to see that it's lived on through 25 plus years, maybe 30 years. Wow. It's been a long time it's been around, so saved a lot of lives.
I believe that, man, and I really think it's a standard piece of ski mountaineering equipment now. I don't know how the sales were, but when I go out, when I have clients, it's something that if people don't have it, they're talking about it. And if it ever gets steep, they're wishing they have it. And I actually don't have one, so I need to get one.
Oh, nice.
I know. I didn't want to have to admit that here. So let's jump into stage 5 of your life. I'm calling Dawn Patrol. So you and your fellow Black Diamond coworkers, the legendary Alex Lowe and Mark Holbrook, would get up in the middle of the night and ski terrifying lines in the Wasatch Mountains of Utah before work. And you called your little clan the Dawn Patrol. I think that's right. And these Dawn Patrol sessions led to your famous book, The Chuting Gallery. Is that right?
Kind of. I mean, we did a lot of the Chuting Gallery as Dawn Patrols. Mm-hmm. The Chuting Gallery was kind of separate. That was, I'd skied 2 or 3 of the classic Wasatch lines, like a Toledo Chute and Superior and maybe Dogleg Chute or something. And this friend said, now you've skied all of the major Wasatch classics. And I was looking around, I was like, I don't know, there are a lot more. So I started to, ski some of them, and I just started keeping track and writing it down. And that's kind of what led to the Chuting Gallery. But the Dawn Patrol was really Alex Lowe. I mean, that guy was just the Energizer Bunny. And he'd always wake up, he'd be at the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning. And, during winter one time, I'd really wanted to ski the main Baldy Chute. And I was thinking, in terms of, you wait till the ski area opens, you ride up, you wait till the patrol opens it, And I told Alex something about it. I was like, oh, I'd really love to ski that this year. And he's like, oh, let's do it tomorrow morning before work. And I was like, no way. Alex was just an amazing, climber. It was like, and then my ego is just like, oh, well, if Alex is going to do it, I'm going to do it. So, but to me, it was just like so far away and so big. And, so we start out in the morning and, bus trail up there. And it was, I think in October, like really early season. And, got up to the top right at first light. It's a beautiful day. The sun's out. And we're just looking down Main Baldy Chute. And it's, 3 feet of virgin powder with, alpenglow morning light on it. And it was just like, wow. So we skied Baldy Chute. It was phenomenal. And, made it back and, look at the clock. And it's like, God, it's only, 9 a.m. in the morning. And it kind of gave me an idea of like what was possible in the Wasatch. Because the access is so easy here. There's like, oh, you can do that. You can go to Wolverine Cirque. You can, go up Superior. You can do things like that. And, it was really Alex that was the driving Energizer bunny. I could do 1 or 2 dawn patrols a week. But Alex would just like, if conditions were good, he'd just like day after day after day after day after day. And, he did some huge ones like Bonkers and Lisa Falls all before work. And be like, what time did you start? Oh, like 3. And you do them solo, oh, my headlamp went out. It was back when headlamps were really bad, so it slowed me down. I got lost and, I was wandering. It's just like, yeah, you could do stuff like, wake up, read a chapter of a book, mount a pair of skis and go do a dawn patrol and then show up at work at, 8:30.
Wow. And in that vein, I have to steal this quote from your book that I want to read to our listeners. This is from the foreword written by Alex Lowe in the Chuting Gallery. And he says, the descents were sublime, but the most excruciatingly satisfying part of these outings was thundering the front door at Black Diamond, where Andrew and I both worked, just as the clock struck 8. Never mind that we were still wearing ski boots, sweat-drenched ski clothes, and would be unable to remain awake past 1 in the afternoon. We'd made it to work on time, having witnessed another sunrise, skied another chute, lived a little more life than the rest of humanity on those exalted mornings. That's what Alex wrote. And I think that just captures, whatever it was you guys were doing. How many years did you guys do this for? But it sounds like you guys were meeting at 3 a.m. and then making a plan and getting out the door.
Yeah, I think Alex was around Black Diamond for 2 years. So we did, 2 winters with him. But then the, tradition lived on. Bill Belcourt, Brad Barlage, Mark Holbrook.
And did you guys coin that Dawn Patrol? It's now this ubiquitous trend doing Dawn Patrol. Were other people doing this?
No, there's nobody out there.
Yeah.
It was great. you'd meet a lot of people and, you'd be finished and they'd just be getting started. And they were just kind of like, how'd you get up? It was like, oh, we just hiked up. And what time do you start? The Dawn Patrol came from, I guess there was a movie by that. And it was kind of like an Army Navy movie. And there was, the special force, like the Dawn Patrol. And so they had something that was like, at dawn we ride. It was like their battle cry. So we were always just kind of saying that as, a joke. But it kind of became the Dawn Patrol.
Well, that's insane.
Reference to the movie.
If you guys coined the term Dawn Patrol, that's phenomenal because, it's used in skiing, surfing, so many of the sports, mountain climbing that we all do. So that's a really interesting backstory. And I love that you guys did it for years and it helped lead to some of the Chuting Gallery stuff. And just, man, it's hard to believe getting up that early and doing that before work. I love that. I love how he says, we could not stay awake at work past 1. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Black Diamond didn't really get their money's worth out
no.
of it.
Well, maybe in the end though, just because that's that part of the culture, right? And that you guys both became these, larger than life figures.
This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Calling all skiers and snowboarders, escape to the snowy peaks of Europe, Japan, China, or Canada with Club Med. There are more than 20 all-inclusive mountain resorts offer unparalleled convenience and endless adventures. Explore world-class ski resorts, indulge in authentic gourmet dining, and unwind with lively après-ski activities. Let Club Med take care of everything so you can simply relax and enjoy your ski getaway. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to discover your ski paradise.
is something I had no idea that you did. And again, this is another thing that pisses me off because every time I'm out with you guiding, it's like, Andrew can just go and go. He's like, yeah, I'll take your clients. I'll do another run. Yeah, you go back, have some coffee. Yeah, you look tired. I'll go. And now I understand why, because you were into ski mountaineering races. This was just part of your physiology. So your background of winning numerous ski mountaineering races in the 90s and 2000s blows me away because I know how difficult those races are and how intense that competition is. You won the Alaskan Pipeline Raid. You won the Randonnée Rally at Alpental, Washington twice. You won the Sudan Couloir Ski Race Extreme in Whistler. You won the Peak to Valley Ski Race in Whistler. And you won the Groundhog's Day Telemark Ski Race at Alta. What the hell, man? Nobody knows this about you. How did these races change the direction of your life? And how did it feel to win?
Oh, it was great. Now, a big part of it was the early development of the sport. And I'd been over to Le Grave, France, and I'd seen like a result sheet from a randonnée race. And I was looking through it, and the times were, it was like, okay, these guys climbed, I think it was like 6,000 feet of climbing, and the times were like an hour and a half or something.
Whoa.
And I was like, really? So it kind of opened my eyes to this whole idea of racing. And so I brought that back, and with Black Diamond, we started putting on the thing called the Powder Keg, which was one of the early backcountry races. And then we made it into a World Cup event, brought over a bunch of Europeans. I think the Powder Keg's been going every year. I was involved with it for about the first 5 years, and now other people have taken it over. But it was really fun at the time because it was just this community event. You'd have 20 people show up, and it was all very loose, and there weren't trails broken, and it was just community. And then as it started to like catch on, it got a lot more competitive. But I've met a lot of really fun, great, fast skiers. Ethan Pringle from Crested Butte, and just a lot of people from Jackson. Steve Romeo. Met a lot of people through the ski mountaineering racing. And then I was on very heavy equipment because I was like, oh, you want to ski steep stuff, you got to have really heavy equipment. And for racing, I started using some Dynafits, which just seemed like little pieces of jewelry. They're little teeny things. Like, you can't take these seriously. And then I started using them. I was like, oh, these things are rad. And then it just kind of went from there. Suddenly you start seeing that 3,000 feet on this lightweight gear is just nothing. You can just dust it off in an hour. And so suddenly your tours, racing was one thing by itself, but then you could apply that to your touring, and you could start pumping out 6,000 foot days or 9,000 foot days, and just more and more vertical through this lighter gear.
I can attest to that too, because I'm a late adopter. I really only started really using Dynafits in the last couple of years, and it is mind bending. You're about twice as fast, I'd say.
Yeah, you'll never go back.
No. And well, I'm still dumb enough because when I think I want to ski hard, I still have my beefy setup because I think I'm tough. Yeah. But then when I know I just, hey, we're just out here to get a long distance done, or the conditions aren't it's springtime or whatever, then I got the Dynafits, and it's amazing. Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. Did you also do 100-mile running race?
Yeah, the Wasatch 100, which kind of goes right through my backyard. So I paced a friend on it one year, and kind of went from checkpoint to checkpoint, saw the whole thing. And it wasn't really running; it was more just like suffering and enduring, which is kind of my forte. So I was like, oh, I'm going to sign up for that. So I did, and I got in. The next year, much to my horror. I'd never run a marathon, I'd never done anything over 10, 15 miles, but it was almost more like a horizontal expedition, a lot of planning and pacing. And, I made it to, I think, mile 75, and I was in pretty bad shape, but I was just like, I'm going to finish this thing. So I finished it. Wow. And quit running after that. That's what kept me going, was the idea of, if I finish, that'll be the end of it.
Well, it's incredible because it looks like you weren't a runner. You did this 100-mile race, and you got, what I read is you got 36 out of 180 people.
Yeah, about like that.
I
think it was 28 hours, but a lot of vertical. I think it was 22,000 feet of vertical or something.
Whoa, I can't even imagine that. It's all starting to make sense now, Andrew, your behavior pattern in the mountains. All right. So stage number 7, you were an avalanche forecaster. The list goes on. So you were an avalanche forecaster for the Utah Avalanche Center for 1 year in 2003 and 2004. What was that experience like, and why did you not continue with that career direction?
It was fantastic. Started doing a lot more expeditions. And so I'd come back, from a trip and be at Black Diamond. And, I was like, oh, yeah, by the way, now that I'm back, I've got another trip planned. So at some point they were like, you need to decide, one thing or the other. So I was like, well, okay, I'm going to take a break, because then the, sponsorship was kind of taking off. And there was an opening for avalanche forecaster at the Utah Avalanche Forecast Center. And I applied and ended up getting the job and working with Bruce Tremper, which was great. Yeah, so I learned a lot from him, Drew Hardesty, Greg Gordon. Yeah, it was great. It was really fun being part of the community, because you're working with all of the backcountry skiing community in Salt Lake, and all the ski resorts would call in. And, I learned a lot about avalanche terminology and forecasting, which is much different. Like, when we usually go out skiing, we're kind of now casting, we're, going out, reacting to the day. But forecasting, you really have to, look at the day and then look at, what the weather is going to be like, and make a forecast. Like, this is what it's going to be like tomorrow. You had to wake up super early. You had to be there at 4 a.m.
Whoa. Well, it sounds like that served you well, obviously. And why did you not continue that career?
It was a little bit of velvet handcuffs. Like, you had to be there every day. It was such a small group of people that if, to go on an expedition meant that, one of these people was going to have to, cover for you the whole time. And that's pretty hard when you only have 4 people and you're waking up at, 2:30 in the morning. If you have 4 people and everybody rotates, you do that, you do your field day and you're at forecasting day. But if somebody's gone, that just means you have to really double up, and it made it a lot harder to go on trips.
So forecaster or professional ski mountaineer, I see where your decision-making went. So number 8 here of your amazing life stages I have is professional ski mountaineer.
That's right. It happened right after forecasting.
It kind of makes sense, right? So you touched on this before, but how did you become one of the first professional ski mountaineers? And when did this start?
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like a really cut and dry thing. It just, slowly evolved. And, part of it was, I think the North Face started one of the first climbing teams. So they had Lynn Hill, Greg Child, Alex Lowe, and Conrad was the team manager. So he
Conrad Anker
worked for the North Face. So they started an actual climbing team, but there was no, real skiing team. But then skiing really started to take off. And so some of these companies like, North Face, and in my case, Mountain Hardwear, started looking at having skiing teams. And skiing had been, up to that point, had been, racing and freestyle and maybe some modeling or something like that. Backcountry was like a new thing. So when the companies started making backcountry specific clothing, they started putting together, backcountry athlete programs. And so I was just lucky enough to, first through Black Diamond, because I was working there, then through Scarpa, and then through Mountain Hardwear. So those 3 companies kind of were the mainstay that kind of got me going.
That's amazing. So where did professional skiing take you, and what opportunities did it afford you?
It was just a blast, and still is. Because it was, and it's changed quite a bit. A big part of what it used to be was you go on an expedition and you'd bring along a photographer, and the expedition would be paid for. And the idea was that you would, take photos and test the product, and then the photos would be used for advertising. And then you would, go and give slideshows and presentations. And if there was a clinic, you'd, teach the clinic and, do writing. So it was really kind of a package deal, speaking. And now, a lot of that has been replaced with social media now. So, the whole idea of like, nobody does slideshows anymore. It's like a dying art. But, that's where you kind of learn to, stand up in front of people and put together a show and talk about it, develop a story, and you travel around, go to ski towns, talk about skiing, and meet a lot of other people and have a good time.
Well, that's the first time I ever met you, is I know you don't remember, but I think it was somewhere, I was around 24. I think it was around, 2005 or so, 2006. And you gave a talk at SQUA. And I I watched your talk and I went and harassed you later after the show and asked you questions. It was about Alaska and it totally inspired me. So I miss that. We still have some of that, but I do miss that. And it's neat to hear that's the protocol and that's how it worked. You went on these trips, you brought a photographer, you gave talks, and that's how you promoted that business. And then the business obviously supported you. Which other ski mountaineers do you look up to?
Lou Dawson was a big mentor. Alex Lowe, absolutely. He was much more known for his, climbing, but, he's the guy that really turned me on to the idea of combining climbing and skiing, bringing ropes and technical gear into the backcountry. Instead of waiting 20 years for a line to fill in, he would be like, oh, let's go do it now and we'll just wrap it. Wow, what a radical idea. I never thought of that. So, there's a lot. Greg Hill, I'm a big fan of Greg Hill.
Me too.
Canada, just super nice, genuine, incredibly strong, a great human outside of skiing. See, the early French extreme skiers, Anselm Baud and Bovan, Tardeville, the original kind of steep extreme ski guys. I never met any of them, but they were obviously, their photos were kind of like, oh, check that out.
In 2010, I interviewed Anselm Baud and Sylvain Soudan in Chamonix for a project back then. Yeah. And they both were just phenomenal. And the essence that Anselm Baud brought to the table, I mean, his just class and the way he moved, it was like, I don't know, this like just suave cat, everything he did is very cool. And then Sylvain is more like, this stocky grunt guy. You can tell he's just muscled his way through things, but both of them just vibrant, older gentlemen. I was very impressed. This is a little bit out of order, but I wanted to get to the Chuting Gallery, which I have as phase 9 of your life. In 1998, you published the legendary guidebook, The Chuting Gallery, a guide to steep skiing in the Wasatch Mountains. And this book simultaneously displays the most challenging lines in the Wasatch Mountains and is objectively hilarious and witty. I've read this book, like I told you, on the toilet so many different times. And it just makes me laugh. So just even the captions, the guy on the cover is doing the weirdest thing. And then the caption's something like, this is how you drop into the sliver with every limb doing a different thing. And it's just, I always thought, why is this how you're supposed to do it? But then I learned that the whole book is kind of joking. And it kind of is, right? At least to me, it makes me laugh so many times. What drove you to write this book?
Yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, after that friend said, you skied the 3 big lines in the Wasatch, I was like, oh, there are plenty more. So I started to, I was always a rock climber. So, rock climbing has ratings to it and a star system. And so it's like, oh, that's, I'm going to climb these things and ski them. And, obviously some are better than others, and I'm going to give them a quality star rating. And some are harder than others, so I'm going to give them a difficulty rating. I thought it was going to be originally like a 8.5 by 11 Xeroxed, folded in half and stapled. And, I'd be like, here, Miles, here it is. And I just hand them out. And, it was never really intended to be like an actual book. And I kept thinking I was going to run out of couloirs. So it'd be like, I got it, one more. All of a sudden I'd worked on it for maybe 2 years. And I was like, okay, this is enough. I'm going to publish it. So I went to fold it and staple it, but it was too big. Like I couldn't do it. So I had to go to what's called perfect binding, which is how paperback novels are made, which meant that instead of doing, 20 at a time, I had to go have them manufactured. Mm-hmm. And luckily, Utah or Salt Lake just has a ton of publishing houses because of the LDS Church. They do a ton of publishing. So there was a place downtown that would publish it, but it was like, well, you have to do 4,000. I was like, oh. I was like, nah. But by then, I'd put so much time and effort into it. And so when I went and picked them up, I was just like, oh, I'm just going to, I'm going to sell 30 of these and I'm going to burn them all. And it's going to be a huge embarrassment because I talked to, some other like Wolverine Press and Chalkstone Press, and they were like, no, nobody wants that type of book. Nobody does that type of skiing. And I was like, I know, I know. Yeah, nobody does.
Can't argue.
I get it, but I was committed. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to take the plunge. And I made them, and I take them around, and, stores were kind of like, nah, nobody wants those, but we'll take 2. And then I'd get home, and there would be a message on the machine being like, yeah, we'll take 2 more. The employees bought them. And then,
Wow.
okay, we'll take two more, we'll take one more, we'll take two more. And it's just like, so anyway, they kind of, it just started catching on. And, I think a big part of it was people wanted to get into backcountry skiing, but at the time, backcountry skiing was really kind of an extension of cross country. It was like Nordic skiing on logging roads and tree hugging and telegear and, crashing. And, suddenly people were just like, oh, this is the type of skiing I want to do. I want to go in the backcountry and ski steep lines. I'm an expert skier at the Alta or Snowbird or wherever. And, I want something that's beyond that. The style of the writing came about because I just, never really expected it to be like a real book. It's just going to be like, it's just going to be like, here, Miles, here's this, here's this book you can read on the toilet and get a laugh out of, type of thing.
And now it's this legendary Bible of the Wasatch that you literally can't live in that area, be a backcountry skier and not have this book. How many of these do you think you've sold over the years?
I don't know. I haven't kept track. I just, I think it's maybe the third or fourth printing or something like that, and it kind of depends. It comes and goes. What's really caught on now is, people are completing the whole series. And so I think there's like an interest because there's 92 lines or 94 or something in there.
How many have completed it?
I think it's up to about 7 or 8.
Whoa. Wow.
People. So.
How long did it take to write the book?
I'd go skiing and then I'd write it up and go skiing and write it up. So I'd say all told, it was 2 years, but, it wasn't like I was working on it nonstop for 2 years. I'd, work on it, pick on it a little bit here and pick on it a little bit there and put together some photos. And I also did all the layout. So I used an old Adobe program called PageMaker. I don't know if it even exists anymore. So, I had to learn PageMaker and then I had to, figure out all the formatting and do all that. So it was more just like a evening beer drinking project for a couple of years.
That you wrote this amazing legendary Bible in only 2 years and just, very, very part-time is phenomenal. And have you skied all the lines in the book?
I did. See, Noah Howell, there was a second person to ski them all. And it hadn't really occurred to me to ski them all. I hadn't done the Joe Ketty's ribbon. I'd done all of them except for Joe Ketty's ribbon. And then when Noah mentioned he was going to ski them all, I was like, oh, I better go snag that one.
So you were the first.
I was the first.
We were the first.
I felt like I had to be, if I was the author of the book, I should at least have skied them all. So.
That's impressive. I will definitely not ski them all, Andrew. This is amazing. But I do want to ski one of these with you maybe this winter because you gave me a hard time. Like, oh, yeah, it's cool you're skiing them in the spring, buddy, but you got to ski them in POW. When we talked last year. Have you gotten negative feedback about exposing the secret lines of the Wasatch?
Yeah, I did in the beginning, but, it was very select. It was like, people were like, oh, you gave away all the secrets. It was like, well, like what? Like, oh, south face of Superior. It was like, oh, come on.
See that from the car.
It's like it's right there. You just looking at it, the Y couloir, the Wolverine Cirque. It was like, so, I mean, these lines that I didn't do any history on them, like a lot of climbing and skiing books have, first ascent, because, the Wasatch, it's just people come and go. So, I'm not really claiming to do first ascents of any of them. I wouldn't doubt if they'd all been skied at one point or another before I got there. So that's why there's no history on them. There is on a few of them, who was an early descender, but it's too hard. The Wasatch is very different in that, the Tetons there's a big sense of history. And when somebody skis something, people know the history of the lines and they know this and they stay in the town of Jackson. And, the Wasatch is just, Salt Lake is so big that people come and go and, there's no real central meeting spot or no central repository of information.
I love how it's so brief and flippant on the descriptions and just comical and almost always discouraging you from skiing it if you think it's a gnarly line. I love that. And have you gotten negative feedback about writing the book about the lines being too dangerous?
No.
That's
yeah,
good.
I mean, some people have kind of grumbled about, the Northeast base of the Pfeiffer horn. That's pretty spicy. And Joe Ketty's is, it's almost more of a rock climbing line. It's a lot of gear setting. And, conceivably it could be done someday without a rope. I mean, you'd have to have perfect conditions and really, really strong testosterone or whatever it would take.
Right. Really big guts.
Yes, to ski it. And, the Great White Icicle, that was, we first skied that because it went up one year and we were ice climbing it, and it was so filled in that it was kind of like, wow, this thing is conceivably skiable. And I haven't seen it that filled in since then, but it's the same thing. I think with, a really big year and the right person, I don't know, maybe someday it'll be skied. But, people kind of grumble about it, but I think they have a good time. If you ski the Great White Icicle, the skiing's not great, but it's hard not to get a smile out of how ridiculous it is and what a great location you're in.
For reference, that is pretty much a roped ski descent, and more or less, like Andrew's saying, an ice climb. Another line you won't find me on. And so to amplify the flippant nature of these descriptions, I'm going to just read a couple quotes from the book that I think are phenomenal. So I love that the Chuting Gallery book begins with a disclaimer from your mom saying
3 disclaimers.
3 disclaimers. I love it. So this one from your mom: the fact that this is a guidebook does not mean that you, the reader, should take it seriously. Obviously, no one in the right mind would ski this stuff, and you shouldn't either. That's so good. And the northeast couloir of the Pfeiffer horn. More fun than running with scissors, sticking paper clips into electrical sockets, or taping firecrackers to a cat's tail. And then I can't say coquetties or the ribbon at Alta. Bring a spare pair of underwear, a likely candidate for the most outrageous inbound ski line in the U.S., and an excellent way to get to know some of the Alta Ski Patrol on a first-name basis. And then Medusa's face, like Russian roulette, more fun to watch than to play. That one just gets me. So we'll move on. So another phase of your life, maybe this is throughout a lot of your life. Talk to us about your avalanche philosophy, because it's different.
I kind of learned about avalanches, or was first exposed to them in the Seattle area. And, they were, maritime, so they're slow, or they tend to be slow. And, you'd see an avalanche and you'd be like, oh, here comes an avalanche. We better ski out of the way. And you could, stand on the edge and watch them kind of slide by. So I kind of took that attitude to the Wasatch when I first started backcountry skiing here. And, the first year we just had, endless close calls because, a soft slab avalanche is much faster and much trickier than a slow maritime one. And then, hard slabs like Colorado are, even a step beyond that as far as, being hard to predict and tricky. I ended up having a couple of close calls with Alex Lowe, and then, triggering slides or going for little rides, and, kind of like, it's like, wow, what was that? Just totally clueless. And so, I took avalanche class, avalanche level 1, and then, level 2, and then level 3, and then eventually got into, forecasting. So, I've been, pushing my education as much as I can, reading about avalanches and, being involved and following the forecast.
And is it true? Yeah. Sometimes you and I think have spoke. Sometimes you won't carry a probe because you think that once you find the person with your beacon, you should just start digging.
Yeah, I know.
I like
that's not a very popular. Because in the early days, probes weren't part of the kit. You'd have a beacon and a shovel. Mm-hmm. And the one avalanche, the first one, fatality I was involved with, we didn't have a probe. And, we just all started digging right away, which was good. And we ended up probing just with the ski pole, just turned it over and probed. And, I think it is important to, start digging as soon as possible. Once you get a good signal, you start digging. And, modern beacons, go down to half a meter so you can get, really close, tell how deep they are and see where people are, get an idea. And a lot of people carry probes nowadays. I carry a probe when I go to Antarctica or when I'm guiding. But, a lot of times I just ski with, maybe 2-3 people at the most, like smaller groups. And, if you have a group of 3 or 4, then somebody can do the beacon, somebody can start digging, somebody can start probing. In those cases, I think a probe is a really good idea. But for a lot of the skiing I do, it's just I realize it's, not everybody's cup of tea, but you got to, at some point you have to start making decisions. Are you going to bring an airbag pack? Are you going to bring a radio? Are you going to bring, your cell phone? Are you going to file a trip plan? And everybody has different levels of backcountry comfort. And for me, the probe is kind of on the cutting edge. I'm comfortable skiing without a probe, not all the time, but more often than not, I'll ski without a probe. Or an airbag. I've got an airbag, but when I go out, I'll be like, well, it's really dicey conditions. I'll bring my airbag pack. And then as I'm pulling it down, I'm like, well, if it's dicey conditions, why don't I just stick to safer terrain? Because it's kind of giving me, I'm the first to admit, if I'm wearing it, I'm Superman. It's like, I'll ski this. If it rips loose, I'll just pop the chute and it'll be fine. And that's not a good way to be. So, if I start to reach for the airbag pack, I just instead change my agenda. It's like, let's just tone it down and ski safer line today rather than putting on an airbag and committing to a steeper, more exposed line.
I hope that's something that resonates with our listeners, because I agree. I actually stopped using my airbag backpack because I think it was pushing me into more aggressive terrain and more dangerous avalanche conditions. And I've recently, I think I'm getting older now, just maybe making better decisions. And so now I do use it more often now, but I agree. I feel like I reach up for the pack when I think I'm pushing it. And then you have to think, maybe I should just not be pushing it. There's a simpler solution here, right? Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I ski with it. Like, we did a trip with Bill Barker to Gulmarg, and that's kind of perfect airbag because you're taking the tram up and you're skiing these huge exposed lines with no hiding spots. There's no trees, there's no cliffs or rocks to hide behind. You're just digging pits, checking it out, and then you're committing to these 3,000-foot open slopes. And that's kind of perfect airbag scenario. If you do get caught, you pop the bag and you'll hopefully float on top. But, around the Wasatch lot, you can ski strategically. You can ski off to the side, or maybe not center punch stuff, or stay on a ridge line, or hide between islands of safety, go into the trees, things like that.
It's another great take home is there's so many more strategies than just the things you read about in books. A lot of times, a lot of it does come from experience. So I think those little strategies of how to manage, that kind of avalanche terrain. That stuff is so valuable. Let's move on to another huge phase of your life, expedition skiing. And I think this has been going on for about 30 years for you. You've been on expeditions to places in the world most people would never even think of going, to Iran, to Antarctica, Svalbard, Baffin Island, Morocco, many trips to Alaska, Iceland, and lots of these trips contain first ascents. What is it about expedition skiing that calls to you?
I just love the planning and the logistics. Like, you think about it and you plan it out and you research it and you find a partner and you get any permits and you do all this work and you think of all these scenarios. How's this going to happen? What are we going to need for food? Who do we need to, and then you get it all set and you kind of launch, and then the trips kind of play out, and then you're kind of like jazz. you're freelancing. Sometimes plan A works. There's a lot of times it's plan A, plan B, plan C. You're just going all over the place, making the best of it. Plans are changing. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. And it's just I really like the bigger picture skiing. It's about skiing, and you go there for the skiing wherever it is. But in the end, it's really it's a bigger adventure. It's a way to explore the world through skiing, or using skiing as a way to explore some of the hidden parts of the world that maybe haven't never been explored before. Oceans have been sailed and people have gone to outer space, but there's some little line up in Alaska that's worth checking out. Could be great skiing. Might as well go launch a little expedition up there and get a group of friends and make a base camp, check it out. It's a good excuse to go to these places and meet people and have a good time.
Yeah, I think that you have seen the world through a lens that almost nobody has gotten to see it through. You end up in big cities and crazy places and interesting cultures, and you don't speak the language, and you get these phenomenal cultural experiences that you would have never gotten. And it's skiing that got you there, which I think is so fascinating. And a lot of times on these trips, Andrew, I know you're going there to ski something steep, right? You're going there to ski something gnarly. What do you think? What's the gnarliest line you've skied on a ski expedition that scared you?
Boy, quite a few of them.
I bet.
Let's see. The first one that really got me going on it was Denali, and that was with Mark Holbrook, and we went to a climbing slideshow about Denali, and it was like, can you ski that thing? It was like, oh yeah. So Mark and I just went there, and we totally lucked out and ended up skiing it on our first try. And so that one was kind of like, wow, if we could ski this, then we can go anywhere and ski anything. And that was kind of a stretch of the imagination. That kind of thinking led to Shishapangma, where that's in Tibet, where Alex Lowe and Dave Bridges were killed in an avalanche. But it was that was definitely the first one that kind of opened my eyes to if you could ski this, then there's just all of the volcanoes. There's stuff in Russia. There's stuff in Baffin Island. There's lines all over the world.
Well, that's so sad about Alex and David and Shishapangma. I did not say that right. But I love the idea that you guys went and skied Denali, and I think you skied the Messner Couloir. Is that right? And you were the first ones to ever ski that. And
we skied the Messner.
The Messner. Yeah.
I think we were technically the first Americans, but it had been skied before.
So you went and skied the Messner, and that gave you the confidence. If we can ski this, we can ski anything. And then, since then you've just gone all over the world. So another big phase of your life is steep skiing, which is kind of rolled up into all this. We can do this quick, but what is it about steep skiing that makes you crazy?
I really like how it's like almost 100% mental. Like when I steep ski, it's you just have to be thinking, I've made millions and millions of turns in my life. I'm not going to fall on this one, because you're starting at the very maximum fall, right? If you're rock climbing and you're free soloing, each step gets more committing. But when you're steep skiing, you're starting at the top. If you blow your first turn, you're going to go the whole way. So a lot of times the first turn is the hardest one to make, and you just have to kind of you have to lean forward, which is very unnatural. You don't want to lean back when you're steep skiing. You'll end up on your tails. So you have to get out over it. You have to have it in your head. I can do this. I've done a million turns, and you just have to kind of make the first couple of turns in autopilot, and then all of a sudden it starts sinking in. You're just like, oh yeah, this is great. I am in a crazy location making skiing turns down this thing, and this is super cool. And then you're working your way down, and then once you kind of get past the point of fearing for your life, you just start opening up and skiing down, and you look back on it, and it's like, there's a really cool big rad line with a set of tracks in it. And, the next snowstorm comes along, and it's there for somebody else to do. So I like the mental aspect of it as much as anything. It's just really challenging.
And are you still
got to believe?
You got to believe, that's for sure. Are you still skiing lines as steep as when you were younger?
I pushed it for a long time, and now they have to be in perfect conditions. I think, when I was younger, I was willing to ski things in dicier conditions, or maybe not willing, I just didn't know any better. Now I still like them, but I'm much more like it has to be kind of perfect.
So you still have the appetite. When do you think the appetite will wane for you for the steep stuff?
I don't think it ever will.
I like that.
It's fun. It all depends. Steep skiing is, you can find something with a really safe run out that's, 200 feet long, or you can find something that's, super committing. But I'd say, a lot of it just depends on the situation, how you're feeling, what your motivation is. It helps if you do it a lot. Like if you're just always steep skiing, you come up and there's a 45, 50 degree slope, and you're like, whatever, you just have a lot more confidence. But if you don't do it and then you get on a steep slope, you're kind of like, whoa, this one's got some spice to it. So, it helps if you do it a lot.
Well, that's great advice. Get out there if in working your way into it, obviously.
Yeah. Work up slowly.
Another stage of your life is ski guiding. You and I first met in either Antarctica or Svalbard, ski guiding together for ice axe expeditions, I think somewhere around 2014, which was an honor for me. And where and when did you start ski guiding?
I started like as part of being an athlete for, Mountain Hardware. Sometimes they'd be like, we've got some dealers. We'd like you to take the dealers out skiing. And so you'd go skiing. Technically you're guiding, but it was more just, having lunch and having a good time. But I think probably with Doug, because I'd been on 2 trips to Antarctica. And then when Doug put together the Ice Axe Antarctica ski cruise, 2009, 2008 didn't happen. 2009 was the first year. And so that was really when I first started guiding, and my background on that was mainly that I'd been to Antarctica and I had, experience skiing in Antarctica, not necessarily, a lot of experience guiding, but it was pretty cowboy, back in the early days. And, then I started, working on my AMGA ski guide certification. And, just a lot of the skiing I was doing in the Wasatch, I'd, be out skiing and I'd just suddenly, be with a group of people and, they'd kind of be looking at me like, what do you want to do? And I was kind of accidentally guiding. And I just felt like I should get more serious about that. So, that's when I got my, woofer and started working on the AMGA cert and stuff like that. So that's how I got into guiding.
And when you refer to Doug, that's Doug Staup, the owner of Ice Axe Expeditions, where Andrew and I both work. And where has ski guiding taken you?
Crazy locations. I did a, multi-million-dollar mega yacht up in Norway a couple of years ago. I did a private yacht down in Antarctica. I've been to Antarctica with you and Doug Staup probably 9 times or something like that. Svalbard with you, Morocco. Yeah, so all around the world.
Where's your favorite place to guide?
Antarctica, definitely.
Me too.
Yeah, it's just it's just so, it's hard to put into words. It's just so good. The guiding in the Wasatch is really fun, and it's fun to turn people on. They come out and you ski powder, and they're just like, wow, this is incredible. Is it like this all the time? It's like, yeah, pretty much. But Antarctica is it's just, you got the wildlife and the penguins and the crossing the Drake, and it's really just turbocharged guiding, and you have 24 other guides from all around the world. So there's a lot of camaraderie, and you meet interesting people, and it's just the ultimate trip.
I agree. It is the trip of a lifetime. We've gotten to do it multiple times, and it's just every time you go there, that every little part about it just absolutely blows your mind. So another big piece of both of our lives and a lot of our lives in the mountains is accidents in the mountains. And you've been skiing heavy lines for 30 years in remote places, and accidents have happened along the way. You've lost friends, as we talked about, and you've been very open about your challenges. I know you have a slideshow where you go through your mountain accidents, and I know that it's emotional. And, what types of accidents do you see out there, and which ones have affected you the most?
As I mentioned earlier, I've been directly involved with 4 fatalities. The first one was an avalanche burial with Roman Latta in the Wasatch. Then there was Alex Lowe and Dave Bridges in Shishapangma, Tibet. And then a friend, we were climbing Superior in the morning, dawn patrolling, and he fell off that and ended up dying. And all of those, especially the first one, I didn't know Roman very well. I just met him the day before. And the thing that really kind of came home to me was, you go out with people in the mountains and you kind of have a relationship, like a buddy bro ski relationship, pushing it in the mountains, doing fun things. But there's really a bigger, everybody has a family and friends, and that really comes home when you meet somebody's parents for the first time at their funeral, or you meet their wife or their kids for the first time, and just there's nothing you can say. It's just like, I don't know why we were doing this. It just seemed like fun at the time. I really regret it. All of the accidents I've been involved with, I never really felt like I was directly responsible. It wasn't like I said, you ski this. I'm afraid of this. Why don't you ski it first, type of thing. It was like it could have been me. With Alex and David, it was the luck of the draw that they were hit and I wasn't. With Roman, it just was the same thing. Dan Rector, same thing. I don't know why he tripped and I didn't. So, but it made me really think a lot more about people and climbing buddies. There's a lot more to it than just the climbing and the skiing. That's what's important to us, but they are people behind the whole thing, and they've got families, and you really need to keep that in mind when you're like getting to a situation, the adrenaline's high and everybody's pumped up. You need to be like, okay, let's keep it in perspective here. Let's calm down and really be a little more analytical about this.
That's all really great insight, and thanks for sharing that. I'm so sorry that has happened, and It's just so good to talk about it though, and tell people these things because we can all learn from it and get better from it. Roman Latta, is that the one? There's a famous picture of a guy jumping into Wolverine Cirque, and they say,
Yeah.
this guy passed away. Did you take that photograph?
Yeah.
You did? Really? Yeah. Wow. Where is that? Somewhere in Salt Lake at a restaurant or something.
Oh yeah. I gave away that was the only copy of it I had. It was an old 35 millimeter slide.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't have a copy of it, but I would kind of like some copy of the image at some point. I haven't seen it for a long time. We made a large print of it and then gave that to the family and the 35 millimeter slide.
That's interesting because that's what I saw. It's a large print. I want to say at a restaurant in Salt Lake, and it's very. I mean, it's giving me chills just thinking about it. It's very impactful because you know that this was the last voluntarily thing this guy did with his life, and it's captured, and that was the last thing. It's making me overly emotional. We'll move on. But yeah,
I've always felt, a lot of the accidents I've been involved with, I'm more than happy to talk about them because I feel that, they weren't done intentionally. There was no malicious on my part. As I mentioned, it could have been me easily. And I think it's important to talk about them so other people don't make that same mistake. I also kind of have a little bit of, the combat humor or
you too, and I love that about you.
Gallows humor, or the humor like doctors and ERs. I mean, I'm willing to admit that skiing is not saving the world. It's a kind of a fun, frivolous sport, and if you really don't want to get injured, then the 100% safe thing is just not to do it. But if you're going to do it, I think you should kind of keep it in tongue-in-cheek perspective. It's not. It is never 100% safe. Even if you are skiing super mellow slopes, I've had really mellow slopes rip out. So it's just something that you have to kind of accept. And personally, I kind of accept it, and with a tongue-in-cheek, sense of morbidity to it.
Well, and that's therapeutic, right? Laughter is a very common human reaction to terrifying, scary, sad situations. So I think that I like your attitude on that. I think it is a good way, a good therapeutic. And but I got to tell you how much that hits me that you took that photograph, because I think about that all the time. I went out to Utah when I was very young. I want to say like 22. We went out there. My buddy pointed it out, showed me, talked about it. Anyway, crazy. One other thing I wanted to talk about is the explosive growth of backcountry skiing. So backcountry skiing and riding has just gotten huge in the past few years. What have you seen out there, and how do you feel about the growth?
I am just totally blown away by it. Mm-hmm. It's not so much anger, but just in awe, because it's a tough sport. You got to break trail. There's a lot to learn. All the avalanche type stuff. There's a lot of gear to buy. And I just always thought, it's great. It's really fun, but there's just like this many people, just a teeny amount of people. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, there are a lot of people getting into this. And it just seemed like, a couple of years ago, it was like, peak oil. It was like, oh, we've hit peak backcountry. But, it's just gone just way up since then. And I just never, ever would have imagined that it would reach the popularity that it has. It's just phenomenal growth. Hard to put into words. When you show up at a parking lot in the Wasatch at 6 a.m. and it's full. It's like, wow, there are a lot of people getting after it. So, but I like it. It kind of pushes me to go further and deeper and find other spots. And I'm really excited to see people get turned on to it. I remember some of my early days of skiing. You see people come back and they've only been doing it for a couple of weeks or a month or maybe one season, and they're just totally gaga about it, and having fun and learning and skiing some classic lines and getting turned on to it. So I think it creates a lot of great backcountry ambassadors.
I agree. Yeah, it's such an all-encompassing experience, and you really are, like a little boat out on the ocean out there. So you have to take care of yourself, and also in that same metaphor, you are really exposed. You experience nature, you experience the wilderness, you feel it all happen. Where obviously at a ski resort, it's much more polished and pruned for you. And one other thing too, I wanted to hit here is you have been involved in conservation efforts, and that really matters to you, especially in the Wasatch. Can you tell us a little bit about your conservation efforts in Utah, what you're fighting against, what you're fighting for, what your level of involvement is?
I think, the Wasatch, what a lot of people don't understand is how incredibly small it is. Like when I first started skiing here, I was just like, wow, it's huge. But then as you start traveling around, going to, Montana, Wyoming, California, you realize that, Wasatch is teeny, just a little teeny spot. And there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of pressure on it. There's ski resorts, there's heli skiing, there's, tons of private property that used to be mining claims that are all scattered around. And yet there's just more and more people coming into the backcountry every year. And I think it's important to, realize that and save it because it could be gone. It's public land. That there is a misconception that public land means that it's going to be, saved for the public. The Forest Service, who owns the majority of the land around the Wasatch, if they randomly decided to get back into mining or, logging, that's public land. It could be sold off. A few years ago, they were trying to sell off a big chunk to put a tram in. And I think it's really important to kind of hold on to these big chunks of land intact without, chipping away at the edges or cutting them in half and dividing them. And, just one ski lift here because, that one ski lift leads to another ski lift, leads to another this, leads to a day lodge, leads to an access road, leads to a closure. And, in the Wasatch, we just don't have that much terrain. So, every little inch of the Wasatch is kind of fought over. And I think it keeps it the way it is.
Well, good for you. And it's good to really save these special places that we have left. There's not a lot of them. So I'm with you on that. So the final phase, which actually has been going on for quite a while now. What year did you get married?
Which time?
the second time. That second time. I forgot about there was a first. The second time. What year did you get married the second time?
See, that's a trick question there.
That is, yeah.
It's been 2005.
2005. So you're now married with children, and your wife at one time, or still is, the woman with the most vertical climbed and skied within 24 hours, Polly.
Yeah.
And you have two little girls, and by your words, two poorly behaved dogs.
Yeah.
So 2005, your family started, and how has that affected your decision making in the mountains?
Yeah, as I mentioned on Colbert, I'm a slow learner. What's really affected is just the spontaneity. When you have a family, it used to be like, Tetons are in great shape. Can you come up tomorrow for 3 days? I was like, yeah, that where you're able to ski steep lines as if you're able to kind of jump on them right away. But now, I still do a lot of skiing and trips, but I really have to, plan for them ahead of time or do, just a 1 day here, 1 day there type of thing. So kind of had to tighten up my program quite a bit. Really, it was like, oh yeah, kids, whatever, they're fine. I didn't. That's the amount of thought that I put into it ahead of time. But they take a lot of time and effort.
I believe that.
And it's been great. It's really fun to see them learning to ski and growing up. And it's I think there's this saying. It's something like the days last forever and the years fly by. It's like day by day, it can be pretty tough. But when you sit back and look at the big picture, it's really fun to go canyoneering or climbing or skiing with the kids and see them get turned on to it, and hear them complaining about what a rough day they had after going to Deer Valley and eating at Steins and then going to a hot tub and watching a movie. And it's just it's fun to see them experiencing it.
Good for you, and congrats on your family. I think that is such a great, it feels like everything's really come full circle and come together for you. And I love that. And that's all I got for you today. Do you have anything else you'd like to add here at the end?
Just have a great time skiing with you, Miles. Look forward to it. We have a lot of great memories from Svalbard and Antarctica. And I think I can't remember the turns that we made together, but I definitely remember hanging out with you.
That's where the memories really form. Drinking Fisk from Denmark, I think, with the clients.
Yeah, I've tried to forget that, but
yeah.
we had some good trips together, and I'm looking forward to doing it again as soon as possible.
Me too, Andrew. Always great talking to you. Always great skiing with you. Thanks so much for taking the time and just thanks for being here and giving us your life story. To learn more about Andrew McLean and to order his hilarious book, The Chuting Gallery, A Guide to Steep Skiing in the Wasatch, please visit straightshooter.com. That's StraightChuter.com.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snowbrains podcast. If you like this podcast, please share with friends and family, and please make sure to subscribe. To find out more about Snowbrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and more. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Ditch the hassle and embrace the freedom of an all-inclusive ski vacation with Club Med. Their resorts in the European Alps and Canada offer the perfect blend of exhilarating skiing, exceptional service, and worry-free pampering. Enjoy having lift tickets, delicious meals, lessons for all ages, and endless après-ski fun, all included in one price. While the kids are having a blast at the supervised children's clubs, you can focus on mastering your skiing skills and creating unforgettable memories on and off the slopes. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to experience skiing without limits. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Liam Abbott. Music by Chad Crouch. And I'm your host, creator, and director, Miles Clark.